Hey everybody, Melissa here. Welcome to my channel. I'm so excited you're all here. So today we're going to be in Word and we're going to be looking at mail merge to create letters and envelopes. Now I know you're like, "Ugh, mail merge? No." And I get it. I really do. I'm not going to lie. Mail merge was one of the hardest concepts for me to get in Word. Now, once I got it, I can do mail merge in my sleep. Oh, but I was not happy when I first had to learn mail merge. And if you ever have to print off hundreds of letters or even email hundreds of letters, mail merge is your best friend to streamline that process. And I can't wait to show you how it works. So let's go ahead and get started. So I have this business letter. It's a one-page document, and it's going to be sent to right around 100 recipients. Now, we could enter this information manually for each letter, but I know you don't have time for that, and I don't have time for that. So we're going to use mail merge to automate that process. So before we start our mail merge process, we need to review the information that's in our Excel spreadsheet. So this spreadsheet contains information about my recipients, their last name, first name, company name, address information, phone number, and email address. Now there's a couple things that we need to check to verify the integrity of our data. Now, one thing we need is a header for each column, which we have. The next thing we want to do is take a glance at it and make sure that there's no unwanted spaces, like James here doesn't have J space AMES, because that will mess up our mail merge. Then make sure your columns are formatted the way you need them to be. For example, I have address, city, state, and zip in 4 different columns. If you need yours in one column, then you can merge these. But for what I'm doing, they can be in 4 separate columns. So let's just scroll down and just take a quick look at our data. And everything looks okay. So now what we want to do is save our spreadsheet and close it out. Now it's time to start our mail merge process. Now if we go over to our mailings tab, our first inclination is to just click here and start the mail merge. Now hang on just a second and bear with me because there's a couple things that we need to do first. Now before we go any further, I want you to notice that address block, greeting line, and insert merge field are grayed out and can't be used. I'm going to show you what happens to those in just a couple of steps, but I want you to notice that for right now. So the first thing that we want to do is go to select recipients, and if we do our drop down, we have the ability to type a new list, which will bring up this box, and we could enter all 100 recipients manually. But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so I'm going to cancel out of here. We also have the ability to choose from Outlook contacts. So if you have all of your recipients in Outlook, then you can do your mail merge from there. But since we are using an Excel spreadsheet that contains them, we're going to click on Use an Existing List. Navigate to where our Excel spreadsheet is, click on it, come down to Open, and then if you noticed it didn't open the sheet itself, but it did open this box that says Select Table. Now because we only had one sheet within our workbook, Word went ahead and selected this sheet. Now, if you have multiple sheets within your workbook, it will try to determine which sheet it is that you are wanting to use, but you may have to change it if it doesn't pick the correct one. Now down on the left here, we have first row of data contains column headers. Ours does, so we need to make sure this is checked. Now before I hit OK, watch what happens to these that are grayed out up here. They're not grayed out anymore, which means they can be used. So now if we go to Edit Recipient List, it brings up everything that is in our spreadsheet. It has all of our recipient information. Now, if we have someone in the list that we don't want the letter to go to, so say we want it to go to everyone except for James Smith, then we can uncheck him and it will not send a letter to him. We have the ability to sort our recipients. We can filter our recipients. Let's just say that we cannot send this to anyone in the state of Kentucky. Tell it okay, and then we can uncheck those names. And to put it back, just go back in and remove your filter. We can find duplicates if we missed that during the step where we were checking the integrity of our data. We can find a specific recipient, and we can validate addresses using a address validation software. So we have what we need for right now, so let's go ahead and tell it okay. Now let's look at how we change Dear Recipient to reflect a name that is in our spreadsheet. So if we go ahead and highlight it, and go to our Mailings tab and go to Greeting Line, we get this box here where we can make some customizations. Now in the first drop down, we can tell it whether to say Dear Recipient, To, or None. So I'm going to leave that one Dear. And then in the next drop down, we can tell it how we want their name formatted. And there's multiple ways that we can do it, but I'm just going to leave it as their first name and last name. And then in the next drop down, we can decide if we want it to be followed by a comma, a semicolon, or nothing. And I'm going to leave it a comma. And then in the next area, if we have a missing recipient name and we do the drop down, we can do Dear Sir or Madam, to who it may concern, or none. But I'm probably going to leave it Dear Sir or Madam. In this next area, we can do a preview and we can go through several of our names just to see what they're going to look like. And then we see correct problems. Now let's just say when you make these changes, you don't see anything in this field. If you go to Match Fields, this is where we can look and see what column it's pulling our information from in Excel. So if you don't have anything in the greeting line, you would want to check here to see if it says first name and last name. If it doesn't, then you just do your drop down and you change it. And then you can tell it to remember this matching for this set of data sources on this computer. I'm very careful about checking that and generally don't, because if something changes on my spreadsheet, this can actually mess it up. So that is totally up to you. I just generally leave it unchecked. And now we're going to tell it okay. And then we're going to tell this okay, and watch what happens. If you see, our Dear Recipient is there, but then so is Greeting Line. Now that this is here, we don't need Dear Recipient anymore. We can take it out. And when we go to do our mail merge, this greeting line is going to be replaced with Dear James Smith, comma. Now let's look at our address. Go ahead and highlight it, and then go up to Address Block. And then this box pops up, and we have the ability to choose how we want their name to display in the address line, which this is fine. Do we want it to insert the company name? And I do. Insert postal address. I want it to have the address. And then format the address according to the destination, country, region. Yes. And then this is how it's going to display. This is our preview box. So let's say we don't want it to display the company name. If we uncheck it, it'll show us what it's going to look like. And then we can preview a couple of records. And that looks pretty good. Okay. So we also down here have the correct problems, and it works the same way as it did on the recipient line. If we go to Match Fields, then we have our first name, last name, and we have our address, city, zip, and if any of these look incorrect, just do your drop down, make any changes you need to make, and then tell it okay. And now let's tell it okay. And now as you see, we have address block, so we no longer need the rest of this recipient information. So just from this address block, it's going to put in first name, last name, company, and the full address. So let me show you a couple of things before we move on to the next step in the mail merge process. While we're still in our Mailings tab, if we go to Insert Merge Field, this contains every field that is in our spreadsheet, and we can insert any of these wherever we want within this letter. Let's just say that we want to insert the phone number. Click on it, it inserts the phone number. Let's say we want to insert the email address. Click on email address, and it will insert that as well. But I'm going to take these out because we do not want these. You can also highlight merge fields. So if you have a really long letter and you've inserted, say, 10, 15 merge fields, this will allow you to very quickly find them to make sure everything looks okay. Now let's preview our results. If we click on Preview Results, you can see it replaced the address block with the address information and the greeting line to the recipient's name. Now, even though we checked for errors before, we have the ability to do it in this step as well before we finalize the merge. If we go up to check for errors, we have three options. We can simulate it and report errors to a new document. We can show the errors as they happen, or we can complete the merge and then send the errors to a new document. I generally keep mine as complete the merge, pausing to report each error because it's really quick. Even though we're sending 100 of these, the process is really fast for it to pause and you to see a problem, fix it, and let it move on. But this is going to be totally up to you. So let's go ahead and say OK. So if we go to Finish and Merge and do our drop down, we have three options. We can edit the individual documents, and that is going to create all of the letters in one continuous Word document. So let's go ahead and click on it and I'll show you what I mean. We're going to tell it All Records, tell it OK, and now we have a document that has every single one of our letters in it. I'm going to close out of here and not save it. Our next option that I want to look at is Send Email Messages. Let's click on that one. And if you notice when this box pops up, it defaults to email_addresses because that is a field that we have in our spreadsheet. You can put in a subject line, you can select the mail format, which HTML should be fine, or you can send it as an attachment, and you can tell it which records to send and tell it OK. At the point you hit OK, it will open up your Outlook client and send the letters. And finally, print them. You can tell it the records, tell it OK, select your printer, and print them off. Now let's look at how to print envelopes to go with your letters. From a blank Word document, we want to go to Mailings, Start Mail Merge, and Envelopes. And then an envelope options box pops up. Now under size, we can pick a standard size, or we can go down and create a custom size. We can change the fonts for both the delivery address and the return address. And this is a preview of what our envelope will look like. Now if we go to printing options, you can see that it has my printer here, and this is what it believes the default settings will be. From the feed method, whether it's face up or face down, and where it's feeding from. Now I would recommend that you print one envelope out to make sure these settings are correct before you select your entire batch. If it's right, then great, you can go on. If not, you can come in here and make any changes that you need to make so that they print correctly. Let's tell it OK. And as you can see, Word has changed this document to where it's in the shape of an envelope. Now if we go down to where our address would be, go to Select Recipients, and we're going to use the same list that we used for our letters. Select your Excel document, tell it to open, and then our Select Table box will pop up. And this is the correct sheet, and our first row does have headers, so tell it OK. And now we can go up and select Address Block. The same box will pop up, and this is the same settings that we have for our letters, so it should be OK, but let's just double check our settings. Then go ahead and click OK. And as you can see, it inserted Address Block just like it did on our letters. If we go up to Preview, we can see what it's going to look like. Now let's enter our return address. If we click in the upper left-hand corner, we can enter it there. Make sure you save your document in the same place you save your letters and name it the same thing except for add envelope at the end of it in case you need them later. Now we're ready to go up to Finish and Merge, Print Documents, and you will now have the envelopes to match your letters. And there you have it. That's how you create letters and envelopes using MailMerge. Now just keep in mind that the more you use it, the easier it will get. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, drop me a comment, and click on that subscribe button before you go. And I'll see you in the next tutorial. Until then, thanks so much for watching.